From a CEO's perspective, how do you make sure urgency isn't just speed, but also agility, so teams can adapt quickly without losing alignment?
Hi, everybody. I'm Jarryd. I'm the CEO of iTalk International, a BPO based out of South Africa. What I can give you context around in that question is I can tell you how iTalk as an organization deals with that from South Africa. So to answer your question around urgency and agility, I break it down into three components. That is my people in my organization, my agents, the way in which they deal with the customer. That is the way in which I deal with the client, and tech. With regards to how our agents deal with the customer, I'm the CEO now of the company, but I've actually been part of it for 20 years. And originally I was an agent when I started out. I used to work from I was about 15 years old at iTalk. And being an agent for a long period of time during my summer breaks and those sorts of things, and while I was studying thereafter, gives you a very good understanding of client urgency, what a client wants, which way in which you need to direct that call. And what we actually do at iTalk is myself, Charmaine, Brad, all of our executive team, when we sign on a client, all of us actually go on as the agent in that first week. And by doing that, we get the best understanding possible of what the urgency of what we're dealing with for our overall customer and what that client is looking for. Because in today's times, customers want instant gratification. So if we understand it from the ground level up, it helps us to enable to grow and be agile with our clients when they need things done. From a customer point of view, like if Brad was my customer as an example.
Whoa.
So Brad being my customer, what we try to do as a business is we try and be agile in the sense that we're a very flat structured company. So I would deal with Brad. He doesn't have an account manager. He would deal with me as the CEO directly and have direct lines into the head of IT, head of people. So when Brad has an issue, any time of the day, he can phone me, whether it's 11, 12 o'clock at night. I actually had an American client phoning me about 3 weeks ago, and they had a problem that needed to be solved, and our whole team got on the call after hours and solved it for them by the time the American day started the next day. So I think dealing with your clients on that level. And from a tech component, iTalk, we've always believed in owning our own tech. So over the last 17 years, we have developed our own tech internally. We don't use off-the-shelf systems. We've either integrated into different AI platforms or built it ourselves. And I think by owning your own tech, you're able to give the client, Brad, my client over here, immediate feedback and immediate integrations, and things happen a lot more seamlessly than if there's a tech provider in between us. So it doesn't always happen that we integrate as we start working with you in a relationship, but our ultimate goal is to help you have like a one-stop shop, so you don't have to have this tech component in between you, to make our customers' lives simpler and to give our customers the best possible outcome.
Guy, where do you see empowerment and agility breaking down on the front lines? And how can leaders fix that so employees keep pace with urgent customers like Brad?
What I would say is, I think that it really begins with transparency, from the top, right? And I think that when you have organizational goals, it's really important for everyone in the organization to really understand those goals and be aligned on them throughout. Because when that happens, I think that you drive the ownership mentality, and everyone will take ownership in their results, even if it's, varying teams working together. But if everyone has a common goal and everyone understands that goal, even if you have, other goals that ladder down to different teams or different functions, when everyone truly understands what the top goal is and everyone's aligned, that's where you get that ownership mentality, and you get fewer of those breakdowns, because regardless of if one team owns this particular piece or part of the goal, they're still focused on that end result. And that also, I think that it empowers teams to work cross-functionally to get to or to arrive to that ultimate, goal that everyone is chasing after. So I think that that's really, really, really important in terms of eliminating some of those breakdowns.
I love that you mentioned transparency, and it kind of reminded me a manager that I once had, and she used to say enough, never assume, always check. Right, and you mentioned kind of coming from the C-level, from the senior leadership of the organization, and the transparency and communication. But I also believe that when we communicate something back in our head, we believe that everybody understood, and this is not always the case. So validating these, checking, so what is your understanding? Say that back to me, or how can your daily tasks, your role can actually contribute to this, is a way for us to actually validate that the communication, the strategy is permeating all levels of the organization.
Well, I would add just one additional point to that is I think also when you mention like validating, there needs to be checkpoints, right? Milestones, so you can do exactly that. Now you can validate along the journey that everyone understands, everyone's on target, and everyone's on point. And if at any point you then need to pivot, now you understand that, right?
Where do you see AI truly helping urgency, and where does it still fall short?
Yeah, it's a great question. But let's answer the one that's up on the screen first, because it's a good icebreaker. So what gets in the way of urgency within our organization? I think we can all agree it's that frickin' procurement team, when they're dealing with contracts and things. Or maybe it's IT. I think we all have a few people that we know that, IT gets in the way of our urgency. But when you look at what's out there and what's in the market, AI, automation, those types of things and tools can bring so much to an organization to get you through over the hump with some different senses of urgency. Think about reporting, dashboards, workforce management, how it optimizes your workforce or your partner with your vendor, that are, across an ocean, over a sea, wherever it is. You have these different redundancy plans that are built in with your AI and your framework that you've built there. Now, where it falls short, it doesn't have emotion. It doesn't get nervous like I am up here speaking in front of you. It doesn't have empathy for the customer that we're writing about the note of like, she lost everything, but we still got to charge her. We can't do, it doesn't bring those things into it. So when you think about, how you have to have a sense of urgency with it, and when you're working with a vendor too, I think, if I'm truly the client of Jarryd here, and I'm going to have a sense of urgency, he's going to be a good CEO, and he's going to temper my expectations to not let me know that we're going to fail or fall short, but also just keep things realistic and be like, Brad, that's a very tight timeline. That's going to be very difficult to hit. And we have AI that we hope can get us over the hump on this and implement, but if anyone's done any form of integration or any partnerships with their internal IT teams, that something's going to get screwed up and something you're going to have to fall back on some form of a contingency plan. So AI doesn't give you the contingency plan. You need a contingency plan to your AI strategy, I think, at the most part. And to kind of frame it up, and I'll kind of leave it with this, Nathan Munoz, if you guys haven't had a chance to talk AI with this guy yet, do it tonight after a beer or two. But we're standing in the parking lot last night, and he gives me this beautiful analogy. And he's like, you got to think of AI like this. You've got your contact center, and correct me if I'm wrong, Nathan, but you got Shaq, and Shaq's in the middle of the call center, and he's just standing up, and he's AI. And then you've got everything else, Allen Iverson, Kobe Bryant, whoever it may be, trying to dribble and get around all that AI. And I was kind of sitting there, I'm like, it's the dumbest but smartest thing I've ever heard. And because you have this pillar in the middle, and you're trying to work around this obstacle, which is Shaq, and you're trying to use AI, and everyone's got tools and things, but nothing's firmed up yet. So there's a lot of good AI, there's a lot of bad AI, and there's a lot of rushed AI. And if you're anything like some of the organizations that I've partnered with, you rush it, you open it, you get it out of the box, you don't read the instructions, and you're screwed. And then you're paying your IT team to do way more hours than what you thought was in your business case, or you have to hire a contractor, and then you're paying them way more because you didn't read the instructions or set expectations with your business. So I think it goes a lot of different ways, and that's probably way too much for you guys to even comprehend what I've said in this last 7 minutes, but it's a definite benefit to an organization. But if you don't take the time to read the instructions, you're going to have a myriad of contingency plans to help out with your lack of AI because you broke it.
When we look at outsourcing globally, what helps is accelerate urgency, whether through speed, agility, or AI capability, and what tends to slow it down?
If you look across the history of what we've done, we not only have been able to solve the urgency in business problems, but as a BPO industry or a BPO support industry for those that don't run the centers themselves, over the last 20 years, we've created a middle class across the world that didn't exist 20 years ago. When I first went to Manila and Delhi back in 2001, 2002, there was a group up here and a group down here, and there was not a middle class. And you go around the world where we've been and where we've gone as an industry and our partners on the back office side, and we have created a middle class where it didn't exist before. And for that, I will never apologize to anyone for being an internationalist and taking business offshore and nearshore, because that sense of urgency by them was good for our business, and it was good for their culture, their economies, and their families. What I'm seeing from both trends that are out there as well as direct access with some of the partners and clients that my team has, the reports of our demise are greatly exaggerated. Somebody asked me a week or so ago, well, what happens when the machines, what happens to customer service jobs when the machines get so smart that they kind of do everyday things beyond customer service? And I said, don't worry about your jobs when that happens, worry about your life when that happens. But my belief is that the bigger players are going to suffer more than the smaller players will. And smaller regional players or country-specific players, because anybody who is supporting in-country work is going to be fine for a while. I'm not deluded enough to think that it will never take a dramatic hit. But I think the smaller firms have the sense of urgency and they have the ability to be more agile than the bigger ones or the medium-sized ones, primarily because they're going to have the opportunity to balance AI with people for the appropriate things. And then depending on what industry you're in, there are certain industries where you should just write it off. I mean, I think anybody that's done BPO for as long as you and I have would be grateful to give up every telecom client in the world and let them go all AI because, they treat us like dogs. But healthcare, financial services, specialty work, selling as a service is going to be still largely human-driven for many years to come. Because there's so many things that require judgment and caring and concern. So I think you're starting to see that the transactional work is obviously going to go away, and that's going to have a significant impact on big companies that have lots of it, and I'll come back to that very briefly in a second. But we're going to shift the industry. The people that will remain will be empowered and emboldened by AI more than they will be replaced, and they will be more focused on outcomes as opposed to transaction. So instead of moving something from here to there, they're going to need to be smarter, they're going to need to be better trained, they're going to need to be better coached, they're going to need to be better equipped. And if you're a buyer sitting around me, they're going to need to be better paid, which means your price is going to go up. Your overall cost can come down and your outcomes can get better, but your price is going to go up because you can no longer just say we're going for the bottom dollar because that's where AI is going to take you. The people that remain are going to have to be much, much more outcome-based, resolution-based than ever before, in my view. And just the last piece, what I'm seeing also is there's just an obsession with AI, both on the Wall Street side and among the private equity groups. And it's interesting to see how much pressure business leaders, both in BPO and across the board, are getting from those those groups to, it's the FOMO that he spoke about. It's how quickly can you get there? It's almost like it was 20 years ago with offshoring. I was at Teletech at the time, and customers, we'd be selling, and the customer would say, "Well, I can't buy now because I got to go look at India." Okay, well, what do you want in India? It's cheap. Okay, well, we can help you with that. No, my boss wants me to go. And it's the same thing with AI that I'm seeing with a lot of buyers is they don't know why they want it. They just know they do because somebody told them they had to. So I don't think it's going to be 2 years from now, there's nobody left. It is definitely going to shrink significantly. But good BPOs should be looking out to find partners who they don't have today, who are going to reduce their staff, and then why wouldn't they just outsource it? If they have 1,200 today and they're going to go down to 400, do they want 400? Do they want those buildings? Do they want all that infrastructure? I wouldn't. So that's a great opportunity for BPOs to go get ahead of AI as opposed to waiting for it to run them over.
For years and years, when we talk about locations, there's this like broad brush of, I like X country because of this, and I don't like X country because of that. Are we still in that place, or do you think we're more assessing based on the skill level, the competency of the particular partner, no matter the geography? I'm just curious about how you take that. I feel like my own opinion is, you have some bad performers in popular markets, and you have the reverse also. So especially at a time like this where the readiness and the AI capabilities are so significant, how much does that overlay to the actual geos?
From my perspective, it comes back to how much a company cares about their customer, and how much they care about customer care. I mean, the biggest lie in American business, those of you who know me for a while, the biggest lie in American business is your call is very important to us. Because it's not. I mean, we've spent careers, and there are many people in this room that are offering solutions. We can do this, we can do that, we can do it faster, we can put a phone tree in. I mean, I'm old and ugly enough to have seen the whole evolution of this thing. And AI is now the big buzzword. But there are some wonderful things that AI has that actually are going to strengthen nearshore and offshore than ever before. Noise cancellation, environmental, accent neutralization, the things that we used to train. I mean, there's some fantastic technologies out there. I'm happy to help you buy them. Call me on my phone. They're wonderful. And I would, as a buyer, I would look now to say, I will still go offshore because I not only get a good price point, I get a committed labor pool, as I spoke of before, and there are technologies out there that I can augment them with that will make them even better than ever.
Recently, there's some really, really strong, talented tech folks coming out of Mexico City, right? So I think that organizations are acknowledging that, and I think that comes back to the risk in changing geos. Folks are interested in the quality. If you can provide that quality and a highly talented, highly educated staff, then that's a win, because again, piggybacking on what Jim said, it comes back to the customer. Like, that's all going to result in a greater customer experience.
When employees don't feel empowered, urgency can turn into chaos. So how can leaders balance the urgency with clarity and control on the front lines?
People need 4 things to succeed. Now, I say that, and let's see if I can remember the 4. They need to know what's expected of them, clearly, right? They need some form of measurement and feedback on how they're doing. They need coaching or correction when it's not being done right, or how they can do better. And they need to know that what they're doing matters. And when you do that, when you create an environment like that with good communication and those kinds of processes, you're going to have employees that understand the mission, know how they're doing against it, and buy into it.
Investing in your people, right? Like, when you invest in the people, whether it be, career path, what is their career journey, training and development for how they can succeed in their role, or even if it's training and development on things that are beneficial outside of the workplace, right? When you invest in your people, they really, really appreciate that, and that really empowers them. It compels them to want to really perform. So I think that that's really, really important.